my medium-term curriculum presentation for placement over the next 6 weeks. Over the next 6 weeks, I want to teach the participants the skills needed to play netball and for them to be able to do the correct techniques. To do this, I will use the technical, tactical, psychosocial stages of development that they are already at and work on any areas of weakness that need to be improved that I've observed since being at placement. At the end of the 6 weeks, my participants should be able to attack and defend and apply this to a mini game. For this, I began with looking at their current stages of development and used resources such as the youth development model to compare what age and stage of development they are at. Started off by looking at the tactical characteristics of my participants. The expectations I had for them was to know what the different types of passing within netball were and which best ones is to use depending on the situation of the play. For them to knowing the technique for shooting and which players will be the goal shoot and goal attack, how to intercept the ball and keeping to the rules when doing so, and knowing where to stand on the court depending on if the team is in or out of possession. Realistically, after assessing my participants at placement, I gathered that they are aware of some of the passes but are not confident in performing them correctly, so we need to go over the techniques to perform them properly, and they also struggle with getting into the open space and tend to group together on the court. By grouping together on the court, it means that they're missing out on opportunities to gain an advantage and potentially score points when playing in a netball match. I then looked at their technical characteristics. My expectations for these were that they were able to pass the ball successfully to where they are aiming. When they're shooting, they're accurate and they use the correct technique when performing the shoot. And they are able to run around the court in a variety of different directions and speeds, which relates to their levels of agility. When assessing my participants, I noticed that they can mostly provide passes with some level of accuracy, but the odd few didn't reach the participants that they were aiming for. The shooting techniques needs to be worked on to increase the accuracy of scoring more points, and their levels of agility are good and they're able to move around the court quickly. When looking at the physical characteristics of my participants, I used the youth development models by Lloyd and Oliver. The expectations for my participants after looking at this was that at the ages of 10 to 11, the boys and girls development levels will be slightly different. This is because the girls will be in the adolescence phase because they are starting puberty, whereas the boys will still be in the middle childhood phase. This means that the boys will still be working on fundamental movement skills, whereas the girls will be more confident with these. However, as a collective, they will be working on agility, strength, speed, power, and beginning to develop sport-specific skills. However, the girls will also work on hypertrophy. I also noticed that the participants do not have much access to sport in their area, and the only opportunities they really get are at school. This means that they haven't got much out of school experience. So some people who only participate in school's physical endurance may be lower than others. So this is also something to take into account when planning sessions. When I assessed my participants' psychosocial characteristics, it was very evident that a lot of the participants were more confident in communicating with each other than some of the others. Some of the others tended to shy away when they were in groups and didn't contribute as much to the ideas and feedback of what I was saying. However, if we work on this, it can also help those individuals that aren't as confident want to participate more and feel more included in the group, which also links to the fact that not all of the participants have had much experience in sport, which means that might be why they're not contributing because they don't feel confident. So it will also be important over my 6 weeks to make sure that they feel welcomed and included in the session so that they put in equal effort too. It was also interesting to look at the participants' level of decision making. This is because sometimes it was quite off, so when there was opportunities on the court for them to take an advantage and potentially score points, they didn't, so they missed out on good opportunities of being able to win the game. Lastly, when explaining some of the instructions to my participants, I did notice that some of them weren't engaging because they were standing with their friends. So when I went into putting them into groups, I took this into account and made sure that they weren't in groups with their friends. Doing this was the best thing that I could have done because it made them more focused and engaged in the activity. So this is also something that I will take into account over the 6 weeks. In order to start planning these 6 weeks of sessions, I had to create a mental model that related to netball so I could get an idea of the areas that I wanted to work on and were important. As you can see on my mental model, I have attacking and defending at the bottom. In between attacking and defensive on the right, it says about the ball has been intercepted and possession has been lost. So this links to how the participants are going to act when the opposing team has got the ball and what they will do to make sure they can get it back, what defensive techniques they're going to use, how they're going to intercept. Is it going to be a 1 foot jump, a 2 foot jump, obviously obeying the 3 foot rule as well in that. And then on the other side, it's got when they receive the ball back, how they're best going to attack because they've got possession again, so running into space, dodging, which also goes through into my 6-week plan, and taking advantage of the fact that they've got the ball back. For my 6-week plan, I've come up with 3 learning outcomes that I would like my participants to be able to have achieved by the end of the 6 weeks. The first one is for them to be able to pass the ball confidently using the 3 netball passes. By keeping the flow going, they'll be able to create scoring opportunities. So this means that I want them to be able to do the bounce, chest and shoulder pass and know these well, that they can implement them into the game smoothly, so there's no stuttering around or risk of them losing possession because it takes too long to pass the ball. The second learning objective is that they transition between attacking and defending easily and know the correct positions to be moving into, such as finding space to take advantage or closing in on the opponents to intercept. And lastly, they're able to progress on their technical, physical, tactical and psychosocial abilities by developing and learning sports-specific skills. So this is my weekly plan for my 6 weeks of coaching. My session structure is going to be the same every week with a warm-up. This will be games-based and some stretching. We'll then go into activity 1, which will be introducing the skill that I want them to be developing. And then activity 2, which is where it will become more games-based and making it more challenging for them so they can play the game in a bigger group and really get into the skill. And then at the end, we'll do like a recap of what they've learned, the key techniques, how to perform the passes, etc. And then afterwards, we'll do a cool down, which will just be some jogging around the court and some stretching. As you can see, I've listed an overview of what my sessions will be over the 6 weeks. Session 1 will be passing the ball, session 2 will be how to land, session 3 will be how to dodge into space, session 4 will be defending, session 5 will be how to shoot, and session 6 will be reaction time in game. As you can see, this links back to my mental model, which is focusing on attacking and defending and taking advantage of both of these when they have that opportunity. This is an overview of my first session and what the plan will be. Session 1 is focusing on passing the ball, so my first learning objective is to learn the different techniques for the passes in netball, so that's for shoulder, chest and bounce. As you can see, I've written out how to do this on my activity and put a game underneath for how they're going to be able to develop those skills. And then learning objective 2 is to perform the passes with accuracy. This links into activity 2 where they'll be playing a pass and move game as well, and you can pause the PowerPoint to see how that's going to work. Session 2 is focusing on how to land when you receive the ball. My first learning objective is learning how to jump stop. This is written out again in activity 1, and then the second learning objective is to stride stop, which is also in activity 1. And as you can see, we're then going to develop that in activity 1 to add a pivot in so that we can move on to working on footwork, which obviously is another important part of netball, and making sure they know the footwork rules so they don't get offsides, lose advantages and miss out on opportunities for the ball. Session 3 is learning how to dodge into space. So this is focusing on the participants moving into open areas to get the ball or intercept from participants so that they don't get the advantage on the opposing team. So my learning objective number 1 is to learn how to travel into open space. This obviously requires a lot of agility from the participants because they'll need to change direction quickly, which, linking back to earlier, is something that we need to work on from the youth development model, so it will target their age and stage of development too. Learning objective 2 is being able to create a dividing run to make space for your team. By doing a driving run, it means that you can get into an open space for your teammate to pass to you, and because obviously you're not allowed to move the ball in netball, it then gives them the opportunity to move around as well when you've got hold of the ball, so they can get to you and you can pass down the court. This will link to activity 2, which is where you are dodging a line of opponents and trying to get past them without them knowing in which direction you're going to be going. Session 4 will focus on defending, which is one of the main aspects of my mental model that I wanted to progress over the 6 weeks. Learning objective 1 is to use the skills learned over the previous sessions to improve their defensive ability. So essentially, I want my participants to understand that the skills that they are learning build up to create them to be able to successfully defend or attack in any netball setting. So by doing this, it enables them to put the pieces together and also recap on the movements that they've learned so that they can successfully defend in a game environment, which we will get to at the end of the 6 weeks. So by doing this for activity 1, as you can see, it's about putting the participants into pairs and using their dodging skills to get past the attacker, one being the attacker, one being the defender, and using their skills to get past each other. Learning objective 2 will be to improve on previous skills and transition into attack. This activity as a whole links the passing and also the dodging of opponents and being able to move and pass easily when someone is trying to block you from passing the ball. So it will test how good they are at passing and show their ability, and also give them confidence under pressure if they complete successful passes. Session 5 then focuses on how to shoot. So learning objective 1 is being able to perform the correct technique to be able to shoot. So I'll explain to them how they're going to shoot the ball and the correct positions to stand in, and then we'll put this into a game where they're in pairs and they practice shooting towards each other, which you can see in activity 1. And then learning objective 2 will be to know when to jump for the rebound. So activity 2 will be focused on a rebound activity of teaching the players to be on ball for when the player, for example, misses the shot. So if a player misses the shot and the ball rebounds, either the attacking team or defensive team needs to be there to intercept the ball and be able to make advantage of that mistake. Session 6 then focuses on reaction time, so learning how to react to the ball being passed quickly. So in activity 1, they'll be standing in groups of 3, and we're just going to get one player to pass the ball to one of the 2 participants, and obviously they need to react quickly to get the ball. So this will improve on their settings in a game environment. And then the learning objective number 2 is to combine all of the techniques taught over the last 6 weeks and be able to apply them to a mini game. So then I'll just play a mini game with them, working on passing, combining everything together so they can get a feel for the game environment and put together everything that they've learned over the 6 weeks and see how it forms together. And then if there's anything that there's missing or isn't quite right, we can tweak that and make sure that they feel confident playing netball and have improved on the skills that I stated at the start of the presentation. Lastly, the references I used for this research was the Youth Development Model by Lloyd and Oliver.